Welcome back, UFC fight fans. We're going to be doing another predictions video today. This one's for UFC 235 coming up this Saturday, March 2nd. Heck of a card. One of the most anticipated cards that I've been looking forward to for a long time. 5 really good fights in the prelims. I don't normally do predictions for the prelims. I might have to come up with another video because the prelims are so stacked. But got 5 really great fights coming up on the main card, and that's what I'm going to be going through today. So for those of you who have seen my videos before, I appreciate you tuning in as always. If this is your first time to my channel, please hit the subscribe button. And as you're watching this video and I'm making my predictions, let me know who you think's going to win, how you think they're going to win, and why you think they're going to win that way. So let's jump right into it though. First fight of the night. Coming out of the bantamweight division, my boy Cody Garbrandt making his comeback, facing the young Punisher Pedro Munhoz. So Garbrandt is now the number 2 ranked guy in the bantamweight division. Marlon's jumped to number 1. Pedro is number 8 in the bantamweight division right now. Cody's 27 years old, 11-2 in his MMA career. Pedro, 32 years old, 17-3 in his MMA career. Vegas odds for this fight, Garbrandt minus 170. Now keep in mind, I'm filming this video on Monday, so the betting lines might change a little bit, but Garbrandt's minus 170 as it sits today. So a little bit about these two fighters. Cody Garbrandt, vicious hands, man. Super fast, big knockout power. He was 11-0 in his MMA career with 9 knockouts before losing his last 2 fights in pretty vicious fashion to Tecia Torres, who exposed him pretty well. He was also a state champion wrestler, Cody Garbrandt was, so he actually has really good takedown offense and defense. Now, we don't see him utilizing that a lot because his hands are so good, but he's actually got a pretty decent wrestling game as well. Pedro, though, fighting out of American Top Team. He's from Sao Paulo, Brazil. BJJ black belt with 9 submissions. 9 submissions in MMA. He's got pretty solid stand-up from what I've seen, but out of his 17 wins, he's only finished 3 of them by knockout. So he's not a knockout artist by any stretch of the imagination. But he's coming off 2 wins in a row after a split decision loss to John Dodson. Now, few of the categories I want to cover today in these fights: confidence and sort of the mental aspect of fighting, striking, and the ground game. So for confidence and mentality for these two fighters, Cody's coming off of 2 losses, 2 bad losses to Tecia Torres, getting knocked out twice, and Pedro's coming off 2 wins. So Cody's also got a lot to lose in this fight. So lost 2 in a row. This would be his 3rd loss in a row, and he's the number 2 ranked fighter. He's fighting down the number 8 ranked fighter. So he's got a lot on the line. Pedro, on the other hand, he's won 2 fights in a row. And with a win over number 2 ranked Cody Garbrandt, he's very well in title discussions. So he doesn't really have a lot to lose. I mean, if he loses to Cody Garbrandt, he lost to the number 2 guy in the division. So this is a really good fight for Pedro, and I give the confidence and mental aspect of fighting, I give that edge to Pedro Munhoz in this fight. Striking, though, there's not much to say. There's a clear advantage to Cody Garbrandt. Now, Cody's got some holes, right? We saw TJ expose some of the gaps in his stand-up. When it gets dirty, he likes to drop his hands. And if you can time it well and get your head off the center line, you can have some success against Cody Garbrandt. But I don't see Pedro doing any of that. I give the clear advantage to Cody in this fight. Former boxer, lightning fast, big knockout power, stand-up, striking goes to Cody Garbrandt. Now the ground game, clear advantage to Pedro Munhoz. So he's a BJJ black belt, and he's got 9 submission wins in his MMA career. Now, the thing about his advantage on the ground, though, is that you got to get it to the ground. So you got to close the distance. You got to get a takedown. And I think he's going to have some issues doing that against Cody. I mentioned before, Cody's actually got really good wrestling, and he's a really good scrambler. Like, if you get a hold of him, if you go down to the ground for a second, he's actually really good at getting away quickly and getting back to the feet. And you also, when Pedro's closing the distance, Cody can hit you fast, quick, and with a lot of power. And so I think Pedro's going to have difficulties getting Cody to the ground. And if he gets him to the ground, I think he might have issues holding him there. But the ground game, the advantage does go to Pedro. But we'll get to the prediction here. I'm a little bit biased in here, but when I was analyzing these two fighters and really looking at this fight, I tried to do it just from a purely neutral perspective. And when I did that, I still came to the same conclusion. I think Cody's getting back into the win column with this fight. I'll not only be rooting for the guy, he's a hometown guy, that's why I like him. So I'll not only be rooting for the guy, but I actually subjectively believe that he's going to win this fight. So I'm going to go Cody Garbrandt with the second round knockout. All right, so we'll get to the second fight of the night out of the women's strawweight division. This should be a good one. Tecia, the Tiny Tornado Torres versus Weili Magnum Zhang. Tecia, she's 29 years old, 10-3 in her MMA career. Zhang's 29 years old, she's 18-1 in her MMA career. Vegas odds for this fight, Zhang minus 125. So it's a pretty close fight according to Vegas. Now, Tecia Torres, so she's a UFC veteran. If you guys have been paying attention to the UFC, you know who she is. A little bit of background, though. She's a black belt in karate, black belt in taekwondo, and a blue belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So her resume is actually pretty impressive. She's got wins over Michelle Waterson, Beck Rawlings, Felice Herrig, Paige Van Zandt, and Rose Namajunas, the current champion. So Rose did beat her in the rematch, but Tecia's only two other losses in her pro MMA career were against Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Jessica Andrade. So she has three losses. One of them is to the current champ, one of them is to the former champ, and the other is to the number one contender who's going to be fighting Rose here in a couple of months. So she's a stud. Now, that said, she's got 10 wins in the UFC. She's only finished one of those fights. I thought that was pretty interesting. She has one submission victory. No knockouts, 9 decisions. Weili Zhang, though. So she only has 2 fights in the UFC, but she's won 18 fights in a row. So she lost her pro MMA debut and has won 18 in a row since then. And she's finished 16 of those fights. 9 of them by knockout, 7 of them by submission. So Zhang is an extremely well-rounded fighter. I watched a few of her previous fights, and I was highly impressed with this chick. So looking at confidence and mentality for this fight, Tecia has lost 2 fights in a row. I mentioned her opponents. Joanna and Jessica were her previous 2 fights, and she lost both of those, whereas Zhang is on an 18-fight win streak. So I'm giving the clear mental advantage to Zhang in this fight. Now, striking. Tecia is the more technical striker, I think, being a black belt in both karate and taekwondo. But Zhang is just more dangerous. I mentioned Tecia doesn't have a single knockout in her MMA career. Zhang has 9. Now, Tecia's opponents have been far and above the level that Zhang has fought. I give her that credit, but she's never knocked anybody out in her pro fighting career. Zhang's knocked 9 of them out. Zhang's also the taller fighter. She's got the reach advantage. So I'm giving the striking advantage here to Zhang. The ground game. Almost half of Zhang's finishes are on the ground. She's got 7 submissions. So Tecia, as I mentioned, she only has 1 submission. Now, I've been keeping the level of competition in mind while looking at this, but I just, the fact that Zhang is dangerous everywhere and Tecia is more of a point fighter, I have to give the advantage, both striking and ground game, towards Zhang. So, although I think striking, it will be relatively close. Tecia is an animal She's quick. She throws good combinations. She's fearless. I really do like Tecia Torres. I think she's a great fighter and has a great opportunity to win this fight. But I think that Weili Zhang gets multiple takedowns in this fight, and I think she spends a lot of time on top of Tecia Torres, ground and pound, trying to work in some submissions. And so I'm going to go with a unanimous decision for Weili Zhang. Third fight of the night out of the welterweight division, 6th ranked, ruthless Robbie Lawler versus Ben Funky Askren. I don't know about you guys, but I'm just so excited to see Ben Askren finally competing in the UFC, and I think this is an exciting matchup for him to make his debut. So Robbie Lawler is 36 years old, 28-12 in his MMA career. Ben Askren, 34 years old, undefeated, 18-0 in his MMA career. So Vegas odds for this fight as we sit here on Monday, Ben Askren minus 290, so almost a 3-1 favorite for the funky one. Robbie Lawler, true OG of the fight game. He made his UFC debut in 2002 at UFC 37. So he's the former welterweight champion. He's known for his vicious style of fighting, hence the nickname Ruthless. Out of his 28 wins in MMA, 20 of those have come by knockout. So Ben Askren, the former king of One Championship and Bellator, world-class wrestler and a BJJ black belt. So this guy, man, he's a former 2-time NCAA national champion, former 2-time NCAA national runner-up, and the U.S. Olympic team member. Just an absolutely world-class wrestler this guy is. And so let's look at confidence and mentality. Robbie Lawler is not afraid of anyone, but he's lost 2 out of his last 3 fights, and he's getting older. He's 36 now, and he hasn't fought since 2017. Ben Askren is undefeated. He's 18-0. Now, he hasn't fought since the end of 2017 either, but Ben's just such a safe fighter. He's never worried about getting knocked out because he never gets himself into those sort of positions. He knows what he's got to do. He's going to go in there and do it, and he's undefeated. So I'm giving the clear edge to Ben Askren on this one, and he's also fighting alongside his longtime buddy Tyron Woodley. So I think it's a great environment for Ben Askren. I'm giving him the nod and the mental advantage of fighting to him. So striking. No doubt Robbie Lawler's got the advantage in the striking game. I mentioned out of his 28 wins, he's got 20 by knockout. He's also got a hell of a chin, by the way. So if he's taking blows, he's taking them well too, except that one against Tyron Woodley. That was pretty bad. So even at 36 years old, I think Robbie can knock anybody out. Now, I could also be wrong, but I don't think Ben's finished anyone on his feet with striking. So I need to go back and look at that. Guys, let me know below if Ben does have a knockout standing up. I'm not sure about that one, but the clear striking advantage, it's going to Robbie Lawler. Ground game, no doubt Ben Askren's got the advantage on the ground. He's one of the best grapplers in the world, one of the best in all of MMA. He's one of the best NCAA wrestlers of all time. He's not a 3-timer or 4-timer, and by that I mean national champion, but he made it to the NCAA finals every year he was competing at Missouri, and he was an Olympic team member. So he really is one of the best wrestlers to ever do it, and he's really done well transitioning that folk style and freestyle form of wrestling into MMA wrestling, which is a little bit different. You're not wrestling with shoes, different rules, things like that. But the ground game, it goes to Ben Askren. He's also finished 11 of his 18 fights by submission or ground and pound. So he tends to get guys in that crucifix where he puts you on your back, where you're belly up. He pins one of your hands down, and then with his knee, with his leg, pins the other hand down and just beats your face. And I've seen him do that in like half of his fights. He's really masterful on the ground, Ben Askren is. So I think he keeps it up. The funky one gets the win. I'm going second round TKO. I'll call it ground and pound by Ben Askren over Robbie Lawler. The fourth fight of the night for the welterweight championship. Tyron, the chosen one, Woodley versus Kamaru, the Nigerian nightmare, Usman. So Woodley's 36 years old, 19-3 in his MMA career. Usman's 31, 14-1 in his MMA career. Vegas odds for this fight, Tyron Woodley minus 200. So 2-1 favorite for Woodley. He's the champ, man. Tyron Woodley is one of the best welterweights of all time. He's a former NCAA All-American wrestler. He's won 6 fights in a row, discounting the majority draw that he had against Stephen Thompson. Man, Tyron's just got one hell of a resume. So he's got wins over guys like as recently as Darren Till, Damian Maia, Stephen Thompson, Robbie Lawler, Kelvin Gastelum, Carlos Condit, Josh Koscheck, Paul Daly. I mean, Woodley really has put together a great resume. Kamaru Usman, though, he's won 13 fights in a row. Dude's on a roll. He's a former Division II national champion wrestler. Strong, good cardio, well-rounded. But he lacks the experience that Tyron has. So Kamaru's 2 biggest wins on his resume are over Rafael Dos Anjos and Damian Maia. So other than that, it's kind of a bunch of no-names. So looking at confidence and mentality, though, Kamaru Usman, dude's on a roll. And he has 0 distractions from what I know. He's won 13 fights in a row, and he's got his eyes just set on that title. Tyron Woodley isn't just fighting. He's acting. He's rapping. He's on a TMZ show. So he's got so much going on outside of fighting that I think I have to give the edge here to Kamaru Usman. Tyron Woodley has even said that he knows all of the opportunities that he's getting today, rapping with Wiz Khalifa, all of these acting gigs that he has, is because he's the champion. You know? So I feel like Tyron Woodley just has a lot to lose going into this fight, and Kamaru Usman almost has nothing to lose. So I got to give the mental aspect of this fight, I got to give that edge to Kamaru Usman. So striking, though, I got to give it to Tyron Woodley. I think he's a safer fighter. He doesn't get himself into a lot of like risky situations, but he's got incredible speed and power. And he's also got the experience against those guys that I mentioned. I mean, think of the striking abilities of some of these guys. Darren Till, Thompson, Lawler, Gastelum, Condit. I mean, all of these guys, if you were to look at the fight prior to Woodley going in there and saying who's the better striker, you'd probably give the nod to all of those opponents, yet Tyron beat them all. So he's also got 7 knockouts out of his 19 wins, so it's not a lot, but he's doing it over really tough opponents, really high-ranked fighters. The ground game. I got to give the advantage here to Tyron Woodley as well. You know, Kamaru Usman is a former Division II wrestling national champion, but Tyron Woodley wrestled at Missouri. He was a 2-time NCAA All-American, Division I, and there are levels to that game for sure in college wrestling, Division I compared to Division II. So I think Tyron's the better wrestler there. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Woodley is. And he's got 5 submissions in his MMA career compared to Kamaru Usman, who only has 1 submission. So I got to give the ground game that advantage to Tyron Woodley too. And so overall, I think Tyron Woodley has an advantage in almost all aspects of fighting over Kamaru Usman, except maybe cardio. And then, of course, the mental aspect, which both of those can be really important. So I think Kamaru Usman can absolutely win this fight. I think he poses a real threat to Tyron Woodley. But that said, I've got to I got to give this one to the champ, Tyron Woodley. I'm going to go third round TKO for Tyron Woodley over Kamaru Usman. Let's go ground and pound on that one. So that takes us to the main event of the night. Jon Bones Jones versus Anthony Lionheart Smith for the light heavyweight championship of the world. Jon Jones, 31 years old, 23-1. Anthony Smith, 30 years old, 31-13. Vegas odds for this fight. This one, again, I'm filming it on Monday. The latest line that I've seen is a -750 for Jon Jones, which is actually as low as I've seen it so far. It's been 800 plus this whole time, as high as like -900 for Bones Jones. But as it sits today, a 7.5 to 1 favorite for Jon Jones. So I don't need to say much about Jon Jones, guys. Y'all know who he is. Y'all know that he poses a threat everywhere. He's one of, if not the greatest fighter of all time. And if you've seen my last video where Jon Jones fought Gustafsson, you know, I'm not a huge fan of the guy, but I respect him, and he's a hell of a fighter. He's fighting Anthony Smith, who Anthony's a killer. He's got 31 wins in his MMA career, and he's finished 28 of those. 28 out of 31 wins by stoppage, 17 knockouts, 11 submissions. So pretty well-rounded as well. But what really stands out to me, I find Anthony Smith's resume like shocking. So he's got 13 losses in his career. One of those was by decision. He's been finished 12 times. So, and that was just as recently as a year ago to this month to Thiago Santos. But he's been stopped 12 times, 8 by knockout, 4 by submission. So, out of 44 professional fights for Anthony Smith, 3 of those have ended via decision. 3 fights out of 44 have gone the distance. I'm like, my mind is blown. I didn't know that about him until really digging into his resume. He's got one win that was, I didn't see all the details in it. It must have been a long time ago, but I didn't see a no contest. I didn't see a draw. I didn't see anything like that. So anyway, any fight that Anthony Smith is involved in is getting stopped at some point. Whether he wins or he loses, you can almost guaranteed it's not going the distance. And when you're fighting somebody like Jon Jones, I don't think that is a statistic you want on your side. If you've been knocked out 8 times, if you've been submitted 4 times, you've been stopped 12 times in the octagon, and you're fighting Jon Jones. So I don't think the script's going to change. I think Jon Jones is here to stay. I don't think Anthony Smith's going to be the one to unseat the king of the light heavyweight division. I'm going Jon Jones by second round TKO. Let's go ground and pound on that one as well. Maybe even doctor's stoppage. Cut him up with some elbows, bleeding from the face. We'll see. But give me a second round stoppage for Jon Jones. And that does it, guys. I really appreciate you all tuning in. As always, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel so you get updates the UFC is just busting out cards this year on ESPN and pay-per-view, and I'm going to do as many of these as I can. When the time is right. So please hit the subscribe button so you get, those notifications when I come out with a new video. And as always, let me know who you think's going to win the fight in the comments below. How are they going to win, and why you think that's the case. So until next time, guys, thanks.